Endurance Junkie podcast, episode 91. Hey Junkies, how are you doing? Thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Now, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future episodes, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and subscribe to the show. We're also on Spotify right now, so if that's your preferred medium, just search for Endurance Junkie podcast in the search bar and you will find us no problem. Just don't forget to click the follow button if you want the show to be listed amongst your favorite podcasts. Before we get going, I would also like to thank everyone who has left a rating and a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Much appreciated. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider leaving me one. It will help grow the show even further. Alright, on today's show I've got Ellie Greenwood, and Ellie is a British ultrarunner based in Vancouver, Canada. She's a two-time Western States 100-mile champion and a course record holder. She's a two-time 100k World Championship winner, and in 2014 she added the prestigious Comrades Marathon crown to her name. So, hi Ellie, thanks for coming on the show. Can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your sporting background growing up in the UK and how you ended up in ultrarunning?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on the show. So I'm originally from the UK. For the last, probably about 15 or so years, I've lived in Canada, currently in Vancouver, so right over on the West Coast. And I grew up as enjoying sports, but I was never, I ran a little, I played netball, a bit of hockey, like that kind of stuff, like any kid really. And I always enjoyed being active, but was never super competitive at any sport as a kid. It was more just about participation. And then it was when I was in my early 20s and I was at university in the UK. And, at that point I'd got into a little going out jogging just for fitness, something I liked. So I signed up for a half marathon. I don't think I had any concept about how long it would take me. I didn't have a background of, you should do speed workouts or how long you should do in advance or anything like that. But I did definitely I better do a little running to get ready for this half marathon. And that's really how the ball got rolling. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. And then it was only probably about a year later that I first came over to Canada. And I linked up with a local running store. They had a marathon clinic. So they were, it was over the course of 4 months or so, let's train up for this marathon. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. And it was kind of something that had, piqued my interest, but I didn't really know how you would train for a marathon. So this was an easy way to do it because it was show up a couple of times a week and you ran as a group and it was very social. That got me into running roads and marathons. And again, I enjoyed my first marathon experience. I mean, I think like everyone, it was hard. I enjoyed it. And by then, running had become part of my social life, a way to, maybe travel a couple of times a year to go to some fun races and that kind of stuff. So for the first few years, it was very much, I like to do well. I like to push myself, but I didn't have, I ran 3 hours 25 for my first marathon. So a nice time, but hardly showing massive potential. But after a few years of that, I then got I heard about these things called ultras. And I thought, wow, that's kind of intriguing that, people actually run further than a typical marathon. And it appealed to me, the idea of trail running as well. So that was a local group here in Vancouver that they put on, really just like group runs, right? Like it was a club, but they're a very low key club, and that got me into trail running and a little bit of ultra running, and that's where I started to see, you know, a bit more success. That it seemed like, okay, the longer you run, I seem to do a little better, and that just became, you know, sort of snowballed in terms of, you know, obviously it's motivating to do well, and so that's probably going back 12 years or so. I ran my first ultra.
Yeah. So your road from beginner to an elite athlete was for you definitely a case of a couple of years of really progressive training and slowly building miles and speed.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I often say to people that I actually think that's quite important. Like, some people get into a sport, and great, if you've been an athlete, you know, and quite competitive at another sport, it's kind of easier to switch over to another one and immediately be successful. But I think one of the reasons that I actually did well was the first few years, it was just about fun. It was just getting, you know, I wasn't purposely, I have no idea how many kilometers I ran each year or each week. It was just getting out there, and in a sense, like, building the foundations of being a runner, rather than sort of, you know, immediately going, oh, well, I've done a marathon, I've got to do a 50K, and well, I did good at that, so, you know, I want to try and run faster. Like, first it was just, you know, enjoyment, but because of that, I got out regularly, built that real base, and that, I think, is quite important for anyone. So
okay. So at what point did you really figure out, like, I can be really good at this if I really focus at it and maybe even make a living out of it?
Yeah, I guess it was probably like around about 2008. I got my first sponsors, and, you know, that was, again, couple of small companies approached me and said, hey, we'd like to sponsor you. We've seen you've done well at local races. So that was quite a motivator, that I then felt, you know, somewhat accountable, and that someone obviously recognized some of my achievements. And then more so it became sort of about 2010 was when I first ran World 100K. So by that point, I was still running mostly local races, although I'd maybe started to go down to a couple in the US, which in the US, they typically have slightly more competitive ultras than we do here in Canada. So I'd seen some good results, and I thought, okay, maybe I could qualify for the British team for World 100K. So that's when I started really setting goals. So instead of just, oh, you know, I'd like to, you know, do well, it was like, okay, I'm going to have to run. Firstly, that was my first 100K that I ran to try and qualify for the team. So it was a new distance, but I'd set a time goal. And so there I got a little more focused in my training with, you know, the real speed workout, structuring, and then long runs, like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, around about 2010, and then it just carried on from there. I'm sure, like many of your listeners find, you know, one good result motivates another. If you go, okay, well, I can do this, but can I do even better, or can I go to a more competitive race? So yeah, definitely around about 2010 was when I started to post some, you know, bigger results, and definitely like going to a few international races.
Yeah. So and did you become a full-time runner then, or were you balancing that running with work?
No. I have always had some kind of other job and form of income. I mean, I think there are a handful of people in the ultra running world that can actually make a living out of running, but it's pretty precarious. I mean, based on sponsors and, you know, prize money, which is not necessarily huge, and obviously you can't rely on it. So for many years, I actually worked for a travel company. So I just had a regular 9-to-5 office job, like Monday to Friday. And then it was in 2014 that I started working. I ended that job, and I decided to try my hand at online coaching. So coaching other ultra runners, and honestly, it's a very flexible job, so that's wonderful that can fit around my training. But it's a pretty like I have over 30 runners that I coach, so it's a pretty busy schedule. But it's a nice balance, and I think it brings structure to my own running. So,
okay. So yeah, you got the running, you got the coaching. Do you feel like you have to make certain sacrifices to live that elite lifestyle that you do?
I don't know, I'd call it sacrifices. I mean, I guess we've all only got so many hours in the day, and we choose what our priorities are. Certainly when I still did work for the travel company, I mean, that was, very set hours and like a full-time job. So when the last few years I was working for them, it was very much, okay, I'm working, I'm training, and those are my two priorities. And if I have time for anything else, I have time for it. And if I don't, oh, well, I don't have time for it. The nice thing about doing the coaching work is, I have slight flexibility of how much work I take on, right? Mm-hmm. And the hours that I work as well. So I don't feel I make sacrifices, but also I live a lifestyle where what I enjoy doing is, training. And often I combine that with, I'm quite a social runner. So, my social life might be going out for an easy run with friends. And in that way, you're getting two things done at the same time. So. Okay.
Yeah, so you talked about 2010. That was when it got serious for you. And I think, you had some pretty amazing results in those first couple of years. I think you won the 100K World Championship. You had 2 titles at Western States. You won Comrades. What was that like to be on top of the ultrarunning world? Because that's what it was, no?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I would say like probably, the years where, everything was going really well and I was getting great results was definitely around like 2010 to 2014. And sure, it was awesome and I was having a great time. I mean, it was a lot of work as well, which I think it's easy from the outside to sort of see like, oh, well, you love running, so you just go out and run these races and it's good fun. But, not all the races were always good fun. There's, even, and it's surprising, I think some people see from that side, oh, I don't know, like you won Western States, that must have been amazing. Whereas like the first year I won it, like I had an absolutely terrible run. Like I felt awful for a vast majority of the time, but it's having that mindset of being competitive and being prepared to go through those things and not give up and still go, well, I still want to do as well as I can. And I'm going to keep pushing and keep working. And that's sometimes what it takes to really get like the best results. So yeah, it was definitely, 2012, I ran an absolute ton of races, but it was a great way to, travel. I got to, race in France and I got to race in Chile and various different places. And to me, that's something I enjoy as well. So it was combining a lot of fun things. The ultra world is growing a little, but it's still a pretty small community. And that was also part of the appeal, that I'd maybe go down to California to do Western States. And it was like, hanging out with a bunch of friends, and they were your competitors as well, for sure. So yeah, it was pretty hectic few years and a lot going on, and but certainly I was embracing the challenges and enjoying the other aspects rather than just the heads down training as well. Okay.
Yeah, you talked about mental toughness and having a horrible day at Western States but winning it. Where does that mental toughness come from then? As you said, as a kid you weren't really that competitive, you were really out there for fun. So where did that eventually come from?
I have no idea where that came from. And I think it's something you can learn in some ways, but I think also innately you do just have to be like that. And I guess a lot for me is, even if I'm having a bad race, is the idea of doing the best you can on that day, right? Whereas, and also I say this to a lot of people, like the more work you put into your training, the more work you're prepared to put in on race day, right? So if you've put in the months of preparation, and again, like I enjoy the vast majority of my training, but there's those days where it's pouring with rain or you're tired and you think, oh, I don't really want to go out and run, but you've gone, no, I've got this race, so you've gone out and you've put the work in. And then that carries forward to race day, because one, if you run through some tough training runs, it makes you tougher for race day. And it also makes you a bit more prepared to, keep pushing through, because like, well, I don't want to throw away all that hard training and just give up in the middle of a race. So I think just trying to like have that attitude, and also when things go wrong, it's about being tough, but it's also about being positive, right? So, you know, however badly, and going back again to that first Western States where, you know, I was feeling pretty rough in the middle, and this one like volunteer, he just said, "Oh, isn't this such a beautiful part of the trail?" And I thought, well, do you know what? I guess it is. So even though I was competing, I said, okay, for now, I'm just going to enjoy being out on the trail, right? So having that, you know, yeah, you need to be tough and push, but also I think you get some of your best results out of actually enjoying the experience along the way.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to be doing these 100Ks or 100 milers one day. I've got some background in triathlon, so I can go for 10 or 11 hours, but I don't have a clue what it's like to go like 19 or 20 or even more hours. So yeah, I know in an Ironman you have these moments when things don't go according to plan and you try to push through. But I mean, I think when you do these 100 milers, it's got to be on a different level.
I think, and I do not come from a triathlete background at all. But I think one of the main differences possibly is, you know, in a triathlon you've got these 3 stages. So you can, you know, if one bit's going a bit wrong, okay, well, if I get through this, like maybe the bike will be better than the swim. And then you get on the bike, and if that's going terrible, okay, the run will be fine, right? But you can also kind of translate that to, you know, running an ultra of, you know, working from one aid station to the next, right? And what I find particularly a lot of, you know, people that are newer, like jumping up to their first 100K or 100 miles is they just panic because they're thinking too much about, I've got to run 100 miles. Well, the way you run 100 miles is you run 1 mile, and then you run the next one, and then you get to the next aid station, and then maybe you get to a landmark on the course, and then, oh, now I've only got 10K, and then I'm going to meet a pacer, and I'm going to have a friend run with me, right? So that breaking things up and not getting overwhelmed by the bigger picture, and yeah, staying, I guess what I'm saying is kind of staying in the moment and just being kind of methodical about it, and yeah, trusting your training and knowing that it is possible.
Yeah, that's pretty solid advice. Good there. Unfortunately, it hasn't all been roses for you. You've been battling an injury for a while now. What's the problem exactly?
So yeah, I've been injured for a little over a year and a half, during which time I have for sure done some running. I mean, far less, and not competed at any ultras. And the problem is right now that many specialists have still not figured out what is wrong with my legs. So that's the main problem. I mean, obviously a year and a half I could, you know, talk for an hour about what's going on, but basically like one leg fatigues almost immediately. It's very heavy, it's very tired, so it's rather difficult to run on it. And as an ultra runner comparison, I say, like, I'll go out for a run and it feels like that leg's already run 100 miles when I've just started a run. So yeah, it's been, you know, it's a frustrating injury. I mean, obviously when you first get an injury, you go through different stages of, you know, frustration that, hey, I've got to miss a race, or I've got to, you know, adjust it, and then maybe you miss another race, but you've still got the optimism that you'll get back, and I'm still hopeful that I will get back, but obviously I'm at the stage now of, you know, I'm possibly actually a little more patient at this stage because I have missed quite a chunk of time of running, and so I say, okay, like, I would like to get back at some point, and I'm not going to put a date on that or put a pressure on it. Fundamentally, like, I absolutely love racing, but I also just really enjoy running. So even if you take away the elite level and the being competitive and the getting to travel to places and all that kind of stuff, like, I just enjoy running. And I think if I'm trying to keep that central to working back. And yeah, like I said, seeing lots of physiotherapists and doctors and all those kind of people, and just keep plugging away until we hopefully get an answer of what's going on, and even better, is there something that can be done to fix it? Yeah.
So have there been moments where it's been better for you, and then that you relapsed, or has it been
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was making, so the injury first occurred May of 2016. And that year oh goodness, I can't even remember. It's such a long time ago. But I really didn't race then the rest of that year. This year I was making significant progress. Things were never perfect. And I mean, this is maybe a scale of things, but I've got up to running about 120 kilometers a week, which is less than I would normally do, but still, I've begun to go, okay, like this is a very workable amount, right? Like you can have speed workouts and you can have, some concept of longer runs and like, I can definitely work on fitness here. And unfortunately in the last, I would say probably about 2 or 3 months, things have, for whatever reason, gone backwards a little. So again, it's, I've taken breaks entirely from running because that is one of the natural things to try, right? When you're injured, is just take time off. Unfortunately, it seems that like that lets things settle down. But as soon as I get back to any, even moderate amount of running, then the symptoms come back again. So I've been trying, keeping active, just apart from, as athletes, we'll feel good if we go out and do stuff. So doing hiking, spending a little time in the gym. And of course, it's nice as well to try and maintain a little fitness. So hopefully once my leg is better, that, I'm not starting from scratch with fitness wise. So.
Maybe you can switch over to triathlon. Yeah, it's only 42 kilometers of running there, and the rest is just a bit of swimming and just some cycling. That's not too heavy on the body.
Suggested it, and I've not been tempted so far, but who knows?
You've achieved a lot. You've got some low points in your career, but what do you see as your biggest achievement and what do you see as your biggest disappointment in your career?
So that first part of the question people ask you more often. So the second part is interesting. I guess, honestly, I'd say my biggest achievement was winning Comrades in 2014. It is difficult to say. I mean, I also won Western States and set the course record in 2012. So in some ways, those are on a par of achievements. But honestly, winning Comrades in 2014 was the harder achievement. So that's why I rank it up there as something that I really had to work for, right? Like it was my third time of running Comrades. I'd come fourth, I'd come second, I'd had to miss a year. So it was something that I thought I could have a perfect day and I still might not win this race. And it's just, I mean, I don't know if your listeners know much about Comrades, but it's around about 89 kilometers. It's in South Africa. It's run point to point. It's over 90 years old. There's about 17,000 people that run it every year.
25, I think, next year.
Yeah, they sometimes have bigger years. Yeah. So it's like, and in the ultra world, there's no other event like comparable in size of participation. So to be able to run an ultra where honestly it feels like you're running a big city road marathon, like there's supporters out there and people know about it and it takes over the city. So yeah, to be able to win that in 2014 where, like I said, I thought I could have the best race of my life and I might come fourth, and that might be what it was. So that was pretty neat. And then I guess disappointments. I mean, it's that's a hard one to quantify. Probably in some ways, like Western States is very difficult to get into. So the top 10 get invited back every year. So in 2011, I qualified to get in. There are some qualifying races where if you win, you'll get an entry. Then in 2011, I won. So I got back to come in for 2012. 2012 I won. I thought I'll go back next year. And then I got a stress fracture. So I guess it's been not one disappointment, but the disappointment that it's really hard to get back to Western States. So even if I get back to fitness of, hey, I can run 100 miles and I'm in pretty decent shape, it still doesn't guarantee that I will get back to Western States, which is, but it's a tough call for everybody to get into that one. So
I think every past champion should have an automatic qualifying spot now.
It's too hard to do. Like it would be, that is like in a million other like conversation of Western states. Like they only allow, and I don't even know the exact numbers, less than 300 people in every year, because they only have a permit to allow that. They can't make the race any bigger, even if they wanted to. So if you start saying, oh, well, left every past champion, and it's only over 40 years old, so that's 40 years worth of men and women. Now, yes, there are multiple champions and some people never come back, but it does get tricky. So it would be nice, but I get it, and it would also make it a different race. And I think the nice thing about Western states is, hey, run 100K, get your qualifier, put your name in the lottery, and you don't have to be speedy, and you've got the chance to run like one of the most prestigious races.
So that's really a race that's still on your bucket list, to go back and see what you can do there?
I would love to, but I can't honestly see it happening. I mean, which is why it's kind of disappointing, because like I said, like it's, to get back in, I would have to run one of these qualifier races where you have to come top 2. So, that's quite a tough call. And the situation I'm sitting in right now, where probably going for a 10-mile run is reasonably challenging, let alone 100 miles. But I can't honestly complain. I've been there twice. It was wonderful. And sometimes you have to say that, maybe those days are over. I'll keep a little bit of hope, but you never know.
Yeah,
so
hope gets you going. How do you define success, and how do you measure up to your own definition?
I guess success, and this is often what I say, like coaching clients as well, is setting out goals that are achievable but not easy, and then achieving them, right? So, and that doesn't even have to be a race, right? It could be some particular workout that you want to do, or a certain pace that you want to hit. But I think it is one of the things that I love about running is like this progression, and you can continually work towards something. Like, a bit cliche, but there isn't a finish line, right? Like you finish a race, and that might have been successful, right? Like you said, hey, I set out to maybe run a distance I've not run before, put myself up against bigger competition than I ever have before, challenge myself on terrain, like maybe some mountainous course I've not done before, and you can work towards that, and then you can achieve something. But I think to be successful, you've got to have a certain element of putting yourself outside of comfort zone, like setting a goal that, I don't know, I might not manage to do this, right? And that's, I find really rewarding about running, that you can see, hopefully continual progress, right? But there's always something different to challenge yourself.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a lot of wisdom there. How can people get in touch with you if they want to, Ellie?
If they want to get in touch, I'm often on social media, as everyone is these days. So if they just look me up, Facebook, I've got an athlete page. It's Ultra Ellie, or Ellie Greenwood, they'll find it. On Twitter, I'm the slightly confusing Ellie JG. And then on Instagram, I'm Ellie J Greenwood. So yeah, if people want to reach out, I love, like I said, I love the ultra running community. So it's always fun to, touch base with people via social media.
All right, cool. Feel free to give some love to your sponsors.
Yeah, so I have got some super sponsors, which I have to say have been very loyal to me over the years. I believe this podcast is coming out at the end of the year, so there will be an announcement for a new sponsor for 2018, which I won't say right now. But otherwise, I have been with Cliff Bar for many years, which is always good to have some fun treats to keep your training going. I'm with Sundog Eyewear, Drymax Socks, and you can actually get the Ellie Drymax Socks if you want to buy those, and then Flora Health as well. So yeah, I very much appreciate those companies that stick behind me, not just in the good times.
All right, excellent. I'll put those links up on the show notes page. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I mean, the only other thing I will say, I've mentioned it a couple of times, is I do online coaching. And like I say, like I treat that as my like full-time job. I absolutely love it. It's with a company called Shaman Ultra Coaching. That's SHARMAN Ultra Coaching. So if people want to hook up, there's a little group of us. There's about 5 of us that coach under that company. I absolutely love that. So yeah, if people want any coaching or guidance in the ultra running, probably not triathlons, but ultra running, I can definitely help them achieve their goals.
All right, cool. Put the link up as well. Yeah, 2 more questions to finish it off. What's the greatest piece of advice you've received in ultra running?
Oh, goodness, that's a hard one. I think, honestly, probably like enjoying it, which sounds really like, well, that's not very good advice. Of course you're going to enjoy it. But, you know, you don't know how long it'll last for. Like I said, I don't know if I'll run Western States again. And even this doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to be about winning races, right? But like, I always say to a lot of people, like, we're not going to the Olympics by running ultras, right? So you might make a bit of money out of it, and that's super, right? But you should still enjoy it. So make sure that you're doing things, I guess, in a sense, for the right reason. Like, don't run 100 miles if you don't want to run 100 miles. You don't have to. Like, you can still be an ultra runner if you've run 50K, right? So, yeah, enjoying the process and continually assessing along the way that you're on track and you've set goals that you're having fun with. So.
Okay. Now we finished the interview. You step outside the house there and you find a lottery ticket that ends up winning $10 million. What do you do?
With $10 million?
You can choose Canadian or US.
Yeah, I'll take US. Yeah. That's a little more. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
And after taxes, so.
Obviously 10 million, you can do a little bit with it, right? So I would buy probably really quite a small house. I live in Vancouver. It's very expensive here. So I would buy a nice little like kind of cabin near a trailhead, maybe. And despite the fact I have amazing doctors over here, I would probably find the world's best doctors and get this leg fixed and get back running.
All right, cool stuff. Thanks for your time, Ellie. And yeah, good luck with recovery. And we hope to see you soon on the trails.
Okay, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode with Ellie Greenwood. Yeah, this was the last episode of 2017, so... I only have one thing left to do, I think, and that's wish each and every one of you a great New Year's Eve. And I hope you'll join me again in 2018. Cheers.